The faint scent of lavender and ancient stone hung in the air of St. Maurice de Lozère, a village so small it barely registered on most maps. That's precisely why I chose it for my escape, a quiet corner of the Auvergne where the only urgency seemed to be the church bells marking the passage of time. I had pitched my tent by a small, gurgling stream at the edge of the forest, the kind of place where you truly feel unplugged, truly alone. My first few evenings there were idyllic. Sunsets painted the sky in shades of peach and violet, and the only sounds were the distant bleating of sheep and the whisper of the wind through the pines. But on the third night, just as the last sliver of daylight vanished behind the towering peaks, a sound cut through the stillness. A howl. Not a dog's howl, not even a wolf's. This was deeper, more resonant, carrying an ancient sorrow that seemed to vibrate in the very bones of the earth. It rose from the depths of the forest, a long, drawn-out cry that ended abruptly, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. I chalked it up to a lone wolf, perhaps, or even a local animal I wasn't familiar with. But the howling persisted. Each night, as darkness descended, it would begin. Sometimes it was just one mournful call, sometimes a series of chilling cries, always emanating from the impenetrable shadows of the woods. And with each passing night, it felt closer. The initial curiosity I felt began to curdle into a quiet apprehension. During my daily strolls into the village for fresh bread and cheese, I'd casually mention the nightly serenade to the handful of locals I encountered. Madame Dubois, who ran the tiny boulangerie, would simply nod, her eyes holding a deep, knowing weariness. "Ah oui," she'd murmur, her voice soft. "La Bête, she calls." Monsieur Laurent, tending his small vineyard, offered a similar cryptic response. He'd simply shake his head, a grim line to his lips. "Some things," he'd say, looking towards the forest, "never truly leave us." Their hushed warnings, combined with the escalating proximity of the howls, began to gnaw at me. I was a rational person, but the local folklore felt thick in the air. Back at my campsite, armed with my phone and patchy signal, I began to research. And that's when I stumbled upon it. La Bête du Gévaudan, the legendary beast or beasts that terrorized this very region in the mid-18th century, responsible for a string of brutal attacks. Descriptions ranged from a giant wolf to something more monstrous, something almost supernatural. The chills that ran down my spine weren't just from the cool evening air anymore. The historical accounts spoke of an almost intelligent predator, evading hunters, striking with uncanny precision. Could the locals truly believe this ancient horror had returned? Or were they simply referencing a primal wild force that still lingered in these old forests? I told myself it was just a local legend, a way to explain the unexplainable. But then, as I lay in my tent, the howls growing louder, closer each night, my rational mind started to falter. One particular night stands out with chilling clarity. The air was heavy, still, almost suffocating. The howling began later than usual, but when it did, it was right there. Not distant, not echoing through the valley. It was from the other side of the stream, just beyond the tree line. It was guttural, raw, a sound that spoke of hunger and ancient wildness. I could almost feel the vibrations of it against the thin fabric of my tent. I lay there, rigid, listening intently. Was that a rustle in the undergrowth? A heavy breath? My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the oppressive silence that followed the howl. I imagined eyes, glinting in the dark, watching my small, vulnerable shelter. Sleep felt impossible. I drifted in and out of a terrified doze, the image of something large and dark looming in my mind. Morning came, a hesitant wash of gray light. I crawled out of my sleeping bag, feeling utterly drained. The forest looked innocent enough in the dawnlight, but the memory of the night lingered like a cold shadow. As I reached for the zipper of my tent to let in some air, my eyes caught something. On the fabric, near the bottom edge, there were long, parallel tears. Not just snags, but distinct, deep gouges in the material. Claw marks, fresh ones. My breath hitched. This was no longer just a sound in the night. This was tangible, physical proof. Something had been here, right here, next to my head, separated by only a thin layer of nylon. A jolt of pure terror shot through me. I instinctively recoiled, scanning the ground around the tent, but there was nothing, no footprints, no disturbed earth. Whatever it was light-footed or simply too large to leave clear impressions. Still trembling, I went to pack my sleeping bag, my mind racing. What had happened? Had it tried to get in? My fingers fumbled with the zipper, pulling it open. And that's when I saw it. Tucked deep within the folds of my sleeping bag, amidst the synthetic filling, was a small clump of fur. Dark, coarse, and matted. It looked like animal fur, but unlike anything I had ever seen. This wasn't the soft, fine fur of a fox or a deer. This was something else, something wilder, something stronger. My blood ran cold. The claw marks on the tent, the fur in my bed. It was a clear message, an invasion. The beast, whatever it was, hadn't just howled in the distance. It had come, silently, intimately, into my personal space. It had been in my bed. The violation felt profound, chilling me to the bone. It wasn't just fear of a predator. It was the terrifying realization that I had been unknowingly exposed, touched by something primal and untamed, a whisper from the past. I packed my car in a blur, my hands shaking so much I could barely tie down the tent. The idyllic French village had turned for me into a place of haunting mystery. I left St. Maurice de Lozère that morning, the sun rising over the hills, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch from the depths of the forest. I drove for hours, not stopping until the winding roads of the Auvergne were far behind me. I never did find a definitive answer to what I encountered that night. Was it truly a descendant of La Bête du Gévaudan? Or was it simply a large, cunning wild animal, made terrified by the local legends and my own growing apprehension? What I do know is that the experience fundamentally shifted something within me. It taught me that some stories aren't just stories. They are echoes in the landscape, living breaths that stir the imagination and remind us that not everything can be explained away by logic. The wild, the ancient, and the unknown still hold their secrets, especially in those quiet, forgotten corners of the world. Have you ever encountered something that defied explanation? A strange sound, an inexplicable discovery, a moment that made you question the very fabric of reality? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more tales of the unexplained. Until next time, stay curious and keep an ear open for those whispers in the dark.